Shalom, everyone. So I've been studying, and remember in this week's Torah portion where we discussed the laws of inheritance? Well, I found something, and this is similar to what you brought up, Brenda. Um, it was in Exodus. I believe you talked about Exodus verse 19, I believe. Yeah, verse 19, or I'm sorry, chapter 19 or chapter 20. I believe it was chapter 20. Yes, it was chapter 20, verse 15, 16, and 17. But there's something in verse 17 that I would really want to point out, and also 17 and 18. Um, and also, when Moshe went up to the mountain, Hashem asked Aaron to go with him. So Moshe didn't go alone. Aaron went up with him. And I want to just read what Brenda was talking about as far as the laws of inheritance and women. My point was that why couldn't the daughters ask themselves? Why couldn't they just go to Hashem and say, listen, our father is dead and we would like his inheritance? And Brenda brought up this portion here, Exodus chapter 20, verses 15, 16, and 17, and I'll read those now. All the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the blare of the horn, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. You speak to us, they said to Moshe, and we will obey. But let not God speak to us, lest we die. Moshe answered the people, Be not afraid, for God has come only in order to test you, and in order that the fear of him may be ever with you, so that you do not go astray. So the people remained this is 18 now. So the people remained at a distance while Moshe approached the thick cloud where Hashem was. Now, I sort of I have to kind of disagree with the interpretation that the Israelites were forbidden from speaking directly to Hashem and having to go through Moshe or Aaron or any of the priests, because it says here in verse 17 that Moshe says, "Don't be afraid, for Hashem has only come to test you, and in order that the fear of him may be ever with you, so you don't go astray." And I think because this chapter is dealing with the covenant, right? I mean, it literally says at the beginning of chapter 20, I mean, the very famous words that we've heard a lot, um, you know, where Hashem says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods besides me. And then going on, you shall not make a sculptured image or any likeness of what is in the heavens above or the earth below or the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am an impassioned God, visiting. Now here's another important point that I'll bring up after, but you can see that chapter 20 is about establishing the covenant. And I think that what these verses are referring to is not you can't speak directly to Hashem, because we see later that there are other people that speak directly to Hashem and there's no problem. I don't think this is warning people not to speak to Hashem one-on-one. I think it's just saying to them, obey the commandments, because the 10 commandments are given prior to this statement. Obey obey Hashem who took you out of the land of Egypt where you were slaves, and follow Hashem's commandments and keep covenant. Um, as far as the line where it says, um, you know, they didn't dare, let they didn't want they didn't want Hashem to speak to them. They were afraid of Hashem speaking to them, not the other way around. Okay? It doesn't say we're afraid of speaking to Hashem. It says if Hashem speaks to us, we will die. And I think what happened in chapters 19 and 20 is the perimeter was set up around Mount Sinai, and the people were, the covenant was about to be announced, and they were prepared, and there was sort of an atmosphere of fear because they didn't know what to expect. So I kind of have to disagree on that point, of those verses being somehow um, relevant to the daughters of Zelophehad. I can't pronounce that name properly. In this week's parsha, uh, getting an inheritance as women from their father. I don't really see the connection because of what it states further. Now, what I was going to bring up before is in chapter 20 in Exodus, um, it says in verse 5, 20 verse 5, "You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generations of those who reject me." Um, remember when we talked about there was part of a Torah portion, I can't remember which one, where Hashem talks about only meting out justice to the people who were directly involved in breaking the covenant, breaking the commandments, etc. Well, this kind of seems to be contrary to that. Um, Now maybe this has to do only with idol worship because that's the context in which this is said. So maybe with everything else, it's dealt with, person by person. But maybe with idol worship, it's dealt with in a, generation after generation, because we know that um, Moshe is going to die in the wilderness before seeing Israel, right? And the reason he's going to is because he struck the rock, he disobeyed Hashem. Um, we know that Aharon also died for the same reason. So I think that I think there's a question here of when Hashem does this, when Hashem punishes a single person for their single crime, or whether Hashem punishes successive generations for something that uh, the first generation did, and then the successive generations. Because even with Adam and Eve, right? That was the first generation, but all generations after that are being punished for that, right? Now we have to deal with um, certain limitations and pain that we would not normally have because of that. So I find that question really interesting. It's kind of the reason why I think about it is because of the Karaite position, and so I kind of keep that in the back of my mind. It's something that I'm constantly aware of when I'm reading the Torah. I'm constantly concerned with Hashem being a fair God, and when I read things like that, I go, does that make what's going on with that? Does that make sense? And sometimes it just, it makes sense in the context in which it's being stated. That was the bus. The buses just started running about, I don't know, almost an hour ago. So, okay, what I would like to say for the rest of the time is, I was a bit harsh tonight when I spoke to people, I still meant what I said, but I was a bit harsh, and I probably could have worded it a bit better. Um, I, you know, I just, I just need to know, and I want to be with people who are, I'm very passionate about studying the Torah, okay? I really want to study with other people who are just as passionate, who really want to understand and have some sort of um, some sort of answer. Now, see, the thing is like there's always interpretations in our faith. We have so many people that give so many interpretations, and I don't think there's absolute right and absolute wrong, aside from the rules of our covenant. But I think when it comes to interpretation, everybody has something, everybody has a lot to give, okay? And what I want is I want I want the people I study with to be just as passionate about studying the Torah as me. I want that kind of excitement, you know. I mean, this is our book, whether you believe it was divinely inspired or not. This is the book that is bound with us and our people and Hashem. This is it. So, to me, it's so ultimately important. Even if you think something might be, and here's another thing, even if you think something might be stupid, like you think, oh, I'm not going to bring that up because it might be stupid, blah, 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 blah. No, no, what you bring up could be central to understanding what's going on in the Torah. I mean, we have the 4 levels of interpretation of the Torah, right? And you know, you might think that what you want to say is might be stupid or it might not be accurate, but you should say it because there's no wrong answer. There's only a group of people collectively getting together and sharing what they think, what they see, and because we're all different, we're all going to see different aspects of this. And I want all of us to be willing to take that step out there and go, yeah, maybe we think what we're going to say is a bit off, but who cares? We're going to say it anyway because we might give a new insight to the meaning of this particular parsha that we're studying or the Haftarah. See, I want other people, I want to inspire that passion in other people. And that's kind of why I felt that I was a bit harsh because I know that's not really going to inspire people. I don't want that. But I also really don't want to be a leader. I really don't. I don't want to be the coordinator. I don't want to be the leader. You know what I mean? I just want I want to be on equal ground with everybody else, and I want all of us to be impassioned about what our time together when we study. And I also want us to be impassioned about the fact that we have a place now, we have a board now, where whatever questions, that's another thing, whatever questions that come up in Torah study, like if I have a question in Torah study about inheritance or whatever, and you've got a different opinion, write it on the board. You know what I mean? That's what it's there for. It's there to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth about these ideas connected to the Torah. You know, that's what it's there for. So, you know, if you find something, then post it. If you have something that you want to say and study, say it. You know, if what I'm saying is, I don't have to answer my own questions. You know, if I have a question, just like you don't have to answer your own questions. If you have a question in Torah study that somebody else is interested in, and they find some understanding about it, they can just as easily post it on the board too. We want to get as much information and interpretation as possible. That's what I want to get across. Shalom.